Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're on a pretty focused mission. We're going deep into a structural framework called GOA-3. And it's something that, promises to redefine how we look at the global economy, at stability itself. You sent us this because you wanted a new way to make sense of it all.
That's right. And our goal today isn't to, judge if the framework is perfectly correct. It's more about using its concepts to see the underlying, well, the structure, the gradient that's driving all these global events. When things get this complex, you need a toolkit. The sources call it a minimal OS.
A minimal OS. I like that. And part of installing that OS is, as the framework says, learning to see structure over just impression, and
Yeah.
even treating these really powerful emotions you see online, the
Mhm.
fear, the outrage, even that intense hope, treating them not as noise, but as sensors.
Exactly. As sensors for where the pressure's building, you're looking for the heat map.
Right.
If you track that high-intensity emotion, you find the stress point in the whole system.
Okay, so let's start with something I think a lot of us have felt intuitively. Why is it that some major cities, places like Singapore or Dubai, or even a tech hub like Austin, why do they feel structurally detached from the country they're actually in? It's like they're running on a totally different clock. Why does all this capital pour into these specific spots and just, bypass other cities in the exact same nation?
That is the perfect place to start.
Yeah.
Because that feeling you have, it validates the entire thesis of this framework. The old map, the one with all the nation states, is becoming structurally obsolete. That difference you feel, that sense of different clocks, it's real. There's a structural reason for it. And it all comes down to how these local systems manage global pressure.
So if that old map is useless, what's the new map defined by?
It's defined by what GOA-3 calls three-phase tension. World economic leadership, it argues, is now determined by how well a system can manage this tension. And once you look at the world through that lens, the map just changes. It completely changes. Because you're not looking at countries anymore. You're looking at cities.
Okay, let's get into I guess, the physics of it. What are these three structural layers that create this tension, or you called it shear?
Yeah, shear.
Yeah.
It's like friction. And it comes to these three phases operating independently, often at just wildly different speeds. That's where the pressure comes from. So layer one is the velocity layer. Think of it as pure acceleration. This is defined by AI and crypto.
The accelerating OS.
The accelerating OS, exactly. It sets the speed for the whole globe. AI dictates decision speed, and crypto dictates financial speed and something else.
And what's that?
Something the framework calls non-territorialization.
Okay, what does that mean in simple terms?
It just means that capital, that wealth, can move and build up completely outside the control of any single country's borders or tax system.
Yeah.
It moves way, way faster than any central bank. So this whole layer is just pure abstract speed.
Okay, so you have this blistering, borderless speed setting the pace. What's the immovable object it runs into?
That's layer two, the boundary layer. The physical membrane. This is what creates the membrane tension.
Yeah.
We're talking about the absolute hard limits a city can maintain.
So physical reality.
Physical reality.
Yeah.
The key ingredient is electricity, water, supply chains.
I can see the conflict immediately.
Oh, it's stark. Just think about it. Generative AI needs these massive GPU clusters, right?
Right.
Well, those clusters demand a staggering amount of power, reliable power. And that means you need grid capacity, grid resilience. When that velocity layer wants more than the physical grid can give,
You get a boundary break.
you get a boundary break. That friction between the logic of AI and the limits of the power grid,
Yeah.
that is the shear.
That makes so much sense. The faster the AI wants to go, the more the physical world pulls back. And that creates this incredible tension you can literally see at the city level.
Okay, what about the third layer? You said it's maybe the most dangerous one? It is. Layer three is the life layer,
Yeah.
or the boundary deep. This is the social stuff, the social sediment. It's the condition of the average household, the job market, birth rates, how exhausted the middle class is.
And the framework calls this calcification. What's hardening here?
The world membrane itself is becoming rigid. Think about it. If the cost of living shoots up because of that velocity layer, but wages and people's lives just stagnate, then that's society.
Yeah.
It loses its ability to pivot. It gets stiff.
And this looks like what on the surface?
It looks like silence, a dangerous quietness.
Wait, hold on. You're saying a society that looks calm on the surface is actually the one in the most danger. How can we tell the difference between real stability and this, calcification?
That is the critical distinction.
Yes.
True stability is adaptive.
Okay.
It's the ability to, pass new infrastructure projects, attract new people, handle arguments. It's flexible. Calcification, this silence, is the opposite. It looks stable, but it's really just rigidity. It's exhaustion. It means the best and brightest leave because housing is impossible, or the city can't pass basic reforms because everyone's just too tired of the pressure.
Whoa.
When that life layer gets too heavy and can't keep up, it's a huge warning sign. The city is losing its ability to fight back.
Okay. That's a powerful idea. So basically, our cities are being stretched and twisted in totally different ways based on how these three things interact. Blinding speed, hard physical limits, and this local social exhaustion.
Exactly, and that brings us right back to the problem with analyzing the nation state.
I get that cities are the new nodes, but surely national policy still matters. Things like, trade deals, military security. That has to be the biggest layer of risk, right?
It's not irrelevant, but it's too coarse for this kind of analysis. National policy is like a huge, heavy blanket. It tries to cover everything, but the real tensions are all happening at the micro level. I mean, think about it. Capital and talent are making surgical choices now. A national policy might affect every city, but the actual reality of living in, say, Austin versus Detroit is just worlds apart. Austin has its own unique blend of high speed, its own specific electricity problems, and its own stressed-out life layer. Those local dynamics determine its future almost regardless of the flag flying over it.
So if I'm an investor looking for where the real growth is, I need to basically just throw out the old country map. The city is the only unit that matters.
For this kind of analysis, yes.
Yeah.
If you're still using the nation-state lens, you're using a tool that's just too blunt to read the system properly. And this leads us to the core concept of GOA-3.
Which is?
Distributed absorption.
Distributed absorption. Okay, let's unpack that. It sounds like the engine driving this whole new map.
It is. Think of it with an analogy. In the old world, the nation was like a big centralized dam.
Okay.
All the capital, the geopolitical pressure, it all gathered at the national level, and then the government would, release it downwards to the cities. The dam controlled the flow.
Right.
Today, that dam is getting weaker. Capital, tech, specialized talent. It flows directly to the cities now. The cities themselves act like localized sponges. They absorb the flow directly, completely bypassing the old national dam.
That's a fantastic distinction. So the successful cities are the ones that have figured out how to just bypass the slow nation state and suck up all these high-velocity resources, AI capital, crypto talent, directly into their own ecosystem.
That's it. A city's success is now measured by its absorption capacity. The cities that can absorb this three-phase tension without cracking their power grid or calcifying their population, they become the inevitable destinations for all those resources.
They become the new nodes on the global network.
The rising nodes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So what does a city have to do then to become a better sponge, to maximize this absorption?
They often streamline local regulations, especially for tech and for building new infrastructure. They invest heavily in their own local power grid, moving way faster than any national plan. And maybe most importantly, they manage that life layer tension. They keep some flexibility in housing and labor markets, even when it's uncomfortable. They prioritize the ability to adapt. That's what keeps the sponge soft.
Let's go back to that warning sign, the life layer threat. What does that quiet social silence really tell us about a city that's reaching its limit?
Like we said, that silence is so deceptive. It's a sign that the social infrastructure, the life layer, has become too heavy, too rigid. The city has lost its adaptive capacity. It can't pivot anymore.
So when does that go from being a problem to a full-blown crisis? You mentioned an irreversible turning point, an ITP.
An ITP is when all three tensions misalign at the exact same time, and you get a cascade failure. First, you have extreme shear blazing speed hitting a boundary layer that just can't keep up. Second, you get deep boundary layer calcification. That's the silence. The society is structurally unable to respond to inflation, to housing pressure, to anything. It's just stuck.
And the third point of failure, you called it a life layer compatibility error. That sounds like jargon. What does that actually look like? Is it just riots?
It's actually deeper than protest. It's when the global rational logic of the velocity layer, say an AI model for optimizing the city, completely bugs out when it hits the local culture.
I see.
It's global efficiency versus local history, and the system just freezes. A perfect national policy fails because local rules are too calcified to change. When those three things stack up, the city's ability to function just breaks. And that's the early warning signal.
This feels like it goes way beyond just data. It's a diagnosis. So if you're an investor, what's the big takeaway from all this?
The key is to recognize that the best investors, they already operate on what this framework calls structured intuition.
Structured intuition.
Yeah. They might feel that A city like, say, Singapore is just fundamentally more resilient than another major hub, but they can't really put words to why. They don't have the language. GOA-3 gives them that language. It names those instincts. It gives them the mechanics. It turns that fuzzy feeling of this place is dynamic into measurable tension points: velocity, shear, calcification.
So the big question for an investor isn't, is this country a safe bet anymore? It's which specific cities have the OS to absorb all this tension, and which ones are just destined to crack under the pressure.
Precisely. It validates that instinct that tells you this city just feels like it's running on a different clock. Now you can actually measure the clock speed. You can forecast risk and resource flow in a way that just ignores the old, obsolete lines on a map.
So this whole deep dive has really been about learning a new operating system for how the 21st century world actually works, forcing us to upgrade our own mental maps.
That is the mandate. We're urging you to shift your mental geography away from countries and start thinking in terms of these interconnected city networks. Use the framework: three-phase tension velocity, boundary, life, and that principle of distributed absorption. Test every major city you look at with it, and you'll immediately start to see which cities are rising, which ones are sort of drying out, and which ones are quietly creeping toward their absolute limits, their ITPs. It changes how you see power completely.
And before we go, let's just loop back to where we started, this idea of emotion as a sensor. That's a really powerful final thought.
It ties it all together, doesn't it? The framework encourages you to look at all that emotional commentary you see online. The rage, the fear, the crazy optimism, and see it not as noise, but as a heat map. That strong emotional language is just a sensor. It's telling you where the localized structural tension is at its absolute highest. If you track the emotion, you find the pressure point. And that pressure point will lead you straight back to the shear or the calcification of the system.
An elegant way to connect the noise of human feeling to the underlying structural physics of the world. That's a profound tool. Thank you for walking us through this.
My pleasure. Go out there and start observing the city networks.